Hi, I hope you're ready for a great ketogenic recipe for brownies. And if you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to find much more ketogenic content on this channel. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding the butter, 130 grams of butter to a bowl, and the bowl is actually going to be microwaved. The original recipe called for it to be done on a bain-marie, which is when you put a shallow amount of water in a pot and you put a bowl on top to create a consistent mild temperature that slowly melts butter, usually used for chocolate. In this case, the microwave works perfect. I'm going to actually microwave it only for 30 seconds. So I'm adding 130 grams of butter. I'm going to add the cocoa powder. In this recipe, the original one calls for 80 grams, but I changed the original recipe because I found it too rich, like way too much cocoa powder, and it does add carbs. I wanted to try it with less cocoa powder, so I'm doing 50 grams of cocoa powder in this recipe. Right now I'm adding a little bit of salt, and I'm going to add my erythritol. So erythritol is what I'm using for sweetener. You can use the sweetener that you like, but I've tested the recipe with erythritol. The original recipe had xylitol, so I assume that works as well. I like a combination of erythritol and stevia, so that's what I'm going to use for this recipe. But when I microwave it, I'm just using the erythritol. So now it's been microwaved. As you can see, it's really nice consistency. Now, once it's mixed up, you want to taste it again. Just make sure you have enough erythritol or whatever sweetener you're using, and then also this is when I'll add my own stevia. So I tasted it, I decided it needed to be a little more sweet. I added erythritol, added my stevia. You want to taste at this point because once you add the eggs, you don't, it's not so bad to ingest raw eggs, but I prefer to just taste it before I add the eggs. One egg, mix the one egg in, and then after that add another egg. Next, adding the almond flour. So the original recipe called for 70 grams of almond flour. I changed it to 100 because I was taking out some of the cocoa powder from the original recipe, so it would have ended up being too liquidy because that's a dry ingredient, so I needed to make up for it somewhere else. What I decided was to increase the almond flour. Next, you want to line a baking dish with parchment paper and dump the mixture into the dish. Spread it out as evenly as possible. Once it's spread out nicely, Add it to a preheated oven of 350 degrees and bake for 25 minutes. Here it is, all done. You want to let it cool for a while until it's good, pretty cooled down. Then I cut it into 9 pieces because it's easy to do the macros that way. And yeah, it tastes good. It's less rich than the other one. It's a little more cakey and less gooey, and less gooey of a brownie, which I'm not as impressed with. But actually, the next day, coming out of the fridge, they were delicious, and I really enjoy this recipe.